What's going on, everyone? So, D'Angelo Russell moving to the bench was huge for really all parties involved, right? Obviously, the Lakers bench was atrocious and still hasn't been great, but D'Lo has kind of elevated that to an extent. We'll dive into that here in a moment. But also, it's good for just the starting unit, the bench unit to have better balance. D'Lo even, I think it's good for him, right? Because a lot of teams don't really have the desire to go and trade for D'Angelo Russell. He's in a contract year, whether it's with the Lakers or another team. At some point, he's going to need a new role and a new opportunity and, a new contract. And teams aren't really like running into the door, tripping over themselves to have him be their starting point guard. But if he's willing to buy into the bench role and be that sixth man and buy into the team dynamic, there's a lot of teams that could use somebody like D'Lo that can make plays and shoot the basketball to the level in which we've seen him be able to do off the bench, right? So he could unlock an entirely new role for him and have more opportunities in the future for free agency and things like that. And from the Lakers standpoint, it could also help facilitate better trades because teams might be like, hey, you know what? Like, we weren't high on trading for D'Lo for our starting unit, but if he's willing to come in and be the sixth man, then that could potentially change things, and teams might actually value him a little more, and rather than just like, hey, he's an $18.6 million contract. Now, a lot of the teams that we're looking to make trades with D'Angelo Russell are probably looking at him as like an $18.6 million expiring contract. They just want to move off the salary. But again, for D'Lo and his long-term ability to stay in this league, moving to the bench and being the sixth man is massive. But D'Angelo Russell moving to the bench immediately bolstered the offense, right? The problem that D'Lo has, especially in the starting unit, is they're running everything through, LeBron, AD, and Austin Reeves, right? AD is the hub. Austin Reeves has kind of been the initiator, kind of been the guy that they're running the offense through. And with the style of offense in which we're running, you don't need that traditional playmaker in that sense. You don't need somebody to be wheeling and dealing all game, right? So D'Lo kind of becomes neutralized. He kind of becomes a non-factor unless he's just shooting the lights out. Because he doesn't give you athleticism. He doesn't give you rim pressure. He's not an excellent on-ball defender, right? Like, he's not a guy that really excels in all these other areas outside of playmaking and shooting the basketball. Well, you don't really need his playmaking as much in the starting unit, and yes, you could use his shooting, but he's been very inconsistent thus far this season. Well, you move him to the bench role, those inconsistencies aren't as significant, and you can utilize his playmaking ability more. You've even heard JJ Redick talk about, hey, D'Lo being on the bench, it opens up kind of more pick and roll actions for him and Anthony Davis. You can run a little bit more of a two-man game. D'Lo can kind of play his game more. It's something that I wanted to see more with Darvin Ham last year that we just didn't get, right? Darvin Ham would sit LeBron and D'Lo together and have Austin Reeves be the primary playmaker. And it was like, that's not his game. Again, he can initiate, he can run the basics, he can find the open man, he can find the occasional cutter, he can run the pick and roll and stuff, but he's not a guy that you'll want just running an offense by himself. You have LeBron to default in the starting unit if you need to, if you're struggling with ball pressure. What the Lakers have struggled with ball pressure so far this season. It's not a coincidence that Austin Reeves has been on ball more. He doesn't handle ball pressure well, right? But when you have D'Lo now in the second unit and you have Reeves and LeBron go to the bench, now you have a real playmaker that can play that role and facilitate and run and keep your offense afloat when LeBron goes to the bench. That's why when LeBron goes to the bench, D'Lo comes in, because you're getting rid of a playmaker and bringing in a playmaker. You just get better balance rather than Darvin Ham doing the opposite last season. But it's not it's not something that is like crazy far-fetched that now that D'Lo is willing to kind of embrace and buy into the sixth-man role, the Lakers aren't as in a rush to trade D'Angelo Russell. So reports came out per Anthony Irwin. I know every time I talk about Anthony Irwin, a lot of people are like, yeah, but it's not something that's far-fetched and crazy. Take it however you want to take it. But according to Anthony Irwin, the Lakers are not as rushed to trade D'Angelo Russell, and they want something a little more significant now, right? Because now he has some value to them. Before, it was just like, really need to get him off the team. Now it's like, no, I mean, worst case, we just keep him and he's the sixth man. And then if it works and he's great and he's willing to embrace that, we could just sign him to a new contract or just let him walk and he clear off $18.6 million plus LeBron James, and he can take whatever he wants. He can take a vet minimum if he wanted to. Now, I don't think he'd go that crazy, but he was willing to take $20 million less this season, right? Who's to say he won't do that again? Now you cleared off $40 million off your salary sheets, plus, all the vet minimum guys. Now you have Rui and Gabe Vincent and other guys on expiring contracts. I've also talked about, and I made a video when D'Lo first went to the bench about, like, now that D'Lo is willing to buy and embrace that six-man role, do you look to upgrade via the other players and keep D'Lo as a sixth man? Because you still have Gabe Vincent, his $11 million, Rui Hachimura, and his $17. You have Jared Vanderbilt, his $10 million, Max Christie, if you needed to, and his $8 million. Not counting, Jalen Uchifino and his $3 million, and then the vet minimum guys. I mean, you're talking, you could get another $50 million in salary if you really needed to, or close to it, right? I mean, you have Rui 27, Gabe Vincent that gets you to 28. Right, 17 plus 11 is 28, plus Jared Vanderbilt gets you 38, plus Max Christie gets you to 46, right? Jalen Uchifino gets you to like 49, some change in a vet minimum guy gets you to 50 plus million, right? Like, you're there, right? Like, you're in, like, you have enough to go get. You could still go get a Zach LaVine and something else, right? Like, you could do multiple moves, you can make multiple trades and still keep D'Lo on the bench if need be, right? Like, so I don't hate the idea, right? Obviously, it'd be nice if D'Lo could kind of get back to more consistency. Last season, he had this same struggle, right? The first, 15, 20 games or whatever it was, he was 31% from three. He wasn't looking like the D'Lo we were hoping he would. And then he just had that game, and then it just was smooth sounds of that. And then he had a historically great season, literally historically great. And that is kind of the hope this season. Okay, D'Lo's having his struggles early on. He's a rhythm guy. He'll get in a rhythm. He also was trying to kind of find where he fit in. Even JJ is kind of trying to find where he fit in. Well, now that they know, now that he can start getting comfortable and settling into his role, okay, maybe now he can start kind of getting back to being the D'Lo we saw of last season. Also, the playoff concerns, right? D'Lo being your starting point guard and being so heavily reliant on to be the guy night in and night out, yeah, that's not great when he doesn't show up. Him being your sixth, seventh man off the bench, now if he's having his struggles or he's having his issues, you're not as concerned. It's not as impactful, right? You can have D'Lo just, hey, you don't got it this game, buddy. Sorry, we're trying to win this series here, right? We'll get you in the next one type thing. And you can kind of still instill confidence in him, but if he does kind of just hit a tank, well, then you're still in good shape because you're not as reliant on him as you would be otherwise, right? And you may be, and I trust JD to still be able to find ways to kind of better utilize D'Lo, right? Hey, your shot's not falling, but hey, you're still a playmaker, right? Let's run some heavy action with you and Anthony Davis. Let's run some heavy action with you and LeBron, right? Let's put you in a position to have more success even with your struggles in other areas, right? Something that Darvin Ham just didn't do. He just kind of was well, D'Lo's got to figure it out. And it's well, maybe do a better job of putting him in other positions. I understand that, you're the coach, you're relying on your player to be good, but he doesn't have it. So at least try something, anything, rather than just throwing your hands up and being oh, well, D'Lo, it's just, those are the differences. I see JJ, if D'Lo is having his struggles, being okay, let's slot D'Lo in other areas, right? Rather than you just being out there floating and just sinking the whole time. Well, let's get you in some more actions, maybe get you going downhill a little more, kind of get you in some situations where you can draw some contact, maybe get to the foul line and try to open up some shot, right? Anything is better than nothing. I still think D'Lo is probably going to get traded. I also think that, assuming the reports are true, that it's kind of more of just a tactic, right? Hey, look, we don't have to trade D'Lo. We don't want to trade. We're fine keeping D'Lo, right? Because you're in these, negotiations for potential trades and stuff like that. And they're, if you come across as hey, we need to get rid of D'Lo. But now if it's no, hey, we figured it out, right? D'Lo's great for us. He's an asset for us. We're not just going to give you D'Lo, right? Now it has to, the trade has to make sense. Right, so it's just, I also think part of it is just a negotiation tactic. I think part of it is true, right? You don't want to just trade D'Lo just to trade D'Lo, right? I still believe D'Lo is going to get traded at some point this season. I do think by the trade deadline, he'll be in another jersey. But I do think if nothing's there, don't force it, right? D'Lo's not a bad player for what you need him off the bench to be. Again, in the starting unit, he's not what you need him to be, right? But off the bench, he's actually everything you need him to be. A guy that can make plays and run the offense, something that Gabe Vincent wasn't able to do. Somebody that can hit shots and give you, 15 plus a night off the bench. He could do that, right? You got a legit sixth man off the bench that I do think can really have an impact continuing going forward. So if you're the Lakers, it is in your interest to stay patient and not rush to trade D'Angelo Russell, right? Like if a deal's there, yeah, take it, obviously, right? If you can get a clear upgrade or just even if it is, like I've talked about it like with Colin Sexton, right? Like they are kind of a wash, but Sexton has things that the Lakers need more, right? Like the Lakers need that athleticism, right? Like, yes, he gives you a lot of the same stuff D'Lo does. He's not as good of a playmaker. He's not as good of a volume three-point shooter, but he does have similar percentages and stuff like that. But he gives you better rim pressure, better athleticism, better point of attack, right? Like there's things, right? Like, so I don't mind if it like on the surface looks like a wash type of trade, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, but the even though it's a wash talent-wise maybe, or maybe D'Lo's a little better, right? But it fills a bigger need. You're filling needs, right? Like those are the kind of things that I would be open to, but I don't want to see D'Lo just get traded just to get traded. I don't want anyone on this team just to get traded, right? Like you got to make the right moves, the right trades. So it does make sense that now you kind of have that leverage point of like, hey, we don't have to trade D'Lo. We prefer it, but it's not a necessity now. It's not something that we have to do where, going into the season, it was something that it was like, Lakers have to trade D'Lo, right? It's just the difference. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you think, yeah, be patient, right? D'Lo buying into the six-man role opens up so much for you. Also, you can kind of hopefully, now that he has a role and has some structure, he can kind of find his footing, maybe be more productive for you as the season progresses. Do you think, no, you have to trade D'Lo no matter what? Doesn't matter. Again, how do you feel? Whatever your thoughts are. Either way, love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. If you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.